what promise and optimism are coming to the state of Ohio as a result of what's going on with oil and natural gas and all of the natural resources that we have here. I want to take just a moment, though, to thank the Hill, API, the American Iron and Steel Institute, the American Chemistry Council, the Ohio Petroleum Council, the Ohio Chemistry Technology Council for hosting this event today. I'm going to give you a quick legislative update, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about where I think that this could be taking us, and then I'll open it up for some questions. You've heard from the state representatives here, the state officials. I believe that Ohio has been doing a very good job of regulating the oil and gas industry for many, many years. If I'm not mistaken, it dates back to 1965. And up until now, it's been going very, very well. But as suspected, it's going to be a continuous battle to keep the federal regulators like the EPA and the Department of the Interior and others from coming in and trying to put their 2 cents worth on top of it. Last week, the EPA released their first major rule regarding hydraulic fracturing and what industry calls fugitive gas from wells. Now, the rule turned out not to be as bad as it could have been, but I am concerned that by 2015, when this goes fully into effect, that it could result in some development stoppage with companies having to put out the money to comply. Furthermore, watching closely the BLM activities regarding rulemaking on hydraulic fracturing on federal lands. There has not been an official rule released by the Bureau of Land Management yet, but I'm pleased to see that they've moderated their original rule that became public a few weeks ago, earlier this year. And why is that important? It's because Secretary Salazar has already indicated that once the Bureau of Land Management finishes their process, they intend to imitate that rule or expect the EPA to follow that same model with hydraulic fracturing regulation on private land. So where do we go with this idea of energy? And what does it hold, the promise that it holds for America's future? I think the best way to relate that to you is to tell you a quick story. First of all, for those of you that I have never met, and I see many friendly faces there in the crowd, I was born and raised on a two-wheel wagon rut mule farm. I didn't have a lot of experience with coal production, but I've got an awful lot of experience with coal consumption because we heated, we cooked, we did so many things with coal. And in those days, natural gas was not plentiful, but I'll get to that in a second. We farmed with mules up until I was about 13 years old. And I told that story once in Washington, D.C., and the gentleman that was heading up the group that I was talking to, he stopped me in the middle of my presentation and he said, "Well, now that's silly. Why didn't you use a tractor?" I said, "Well, we didn't have a tractor." He said, "Why didn't you borrow one?" I said, "Sir, you don't seem to understand. We had to borrow the mule." My grandfather and I would literally walk 2 miles with 2 5-gallon buckets of corn. And that's how we paid for the work of a neighboring farmer's mule. I joined the Air Force out of high school, spent 26.5 years in the Air Force after retirement in 1999, started a couple of small information technology businesses, so I know what creating jobs is all about. I know how hard it is to start a business. I know how hard it is to sustain a business. I wound up prior to election in 2010 as the Chief Information Officer for a global manufacturing company headquartered in Trumbull County, up in northeastern Ohio. And through those years of experience, I have grown to exceptionalism of America. You heard just a few minutes ago some of the questions that came up around, our public health, public safety risks. Are we doing the right calculations to make sure that we're doing the right things? I submit to you that if we were as risk averse in the 1900s, early 1900s as we are today, we would have never flown an airplane. We would have never made it to the moon. Many of the technological advances that we've seen here in this country over the last 200 years would have never happened if we were as risk averse then as we are today. And I want to tell you the story that highlights that. I stood on the House floor back last March of 2011, and the Prime Minister of Australia was addressing a joint session of Congress. The Senate was there, the House was there, many of the President's cabinet members were there. And the Prime Minister started her speech off with a story. She said, "I remember being a young girl, sitting on my living room floor, watching Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin land on the moon, thinking to myself, wow, those Americans can do anything." She went on to talk about Australia and America's history together, how we had partnered to address many of the world's problems, particularly in the Pacific, how America had stood alongside and oftentimes in front of Australia during World War II. At the end of her speech, she said, "You know, I'm not that young girl anymore. Today I'm the Prime Minister of our country, and I have a lot of experience under my belt. But yet, still today, I believe that Americans can do anything." And when she said that the second time, with such conviction, you could almost feel a cleansing breath take place in the chamber of the House of Representatives. You could have heard a pin drop on the floor. It's not because we don't believe that, but we certainly don't hear that enough these days. That idea of American exceptionalism. That story that she related, I know many of you, because I can tell some of you have the same color hair I do, and some of you have no hair, but that's okay. You remember what happened when John Kennedy sent us on that moon mission. He said, "We're going to the moon in 10 years. We didn't make it in 10 years. How many years did it take us? It only took us 7. And why was that? It's because he engaged every fabric of America's society. Our economic will, our political will, our industrial base, our military, our academic institutions. You saw industries crop up overnight around space exploration. You saw millions of jobs created. You saw young people lined up to get into degree programs that would prepare for them for careers in space exploration. And at the end of the day, look at the technological advances that came out of that era. You got a cell phone on you? That came out of the space race. You got a flat screen TV at home or a GPS in your car? That came out of the space race. Anybody in here ever had arthroscopic surgery, non-invasive surgery? We had to figure out how to operate on our space travelers without things floating around the capsule that didn't need to float around. And so we had to find better ways of doing things. Even medical technology advances came out of that space race. Think about what America could do if we had that same American exceptionalism vision around energy. Ohio is sitting here on the precipice, at a point of being able to be at the center, at the epicenter of a revitalization of American exceptionalism. And here's what I think that would take. Here's what an all of the above energy policy looks like to me. We're going to go after the 3 trillion barrels of oil that we own here in America. We're going to harvest the vast volumes of natural gas and oil that we own. And we're sitting on what many think is the world's largest volume of natural gas here along the Ohio River. We're going to continue to mine coal because we've got enough coal in this country to fuel much of our energy needs for generations yet to come, and there's a partnership between natural gas and coal that could move us forward. And we're going to learn how to use it environmentally soundly and safely. We're going to even expand our nuclear footprint because, guess what? Nuclear energy that we developed here in America is the safest, most reliable form of energy known on the planet. It's just really expensive these days because of some bad decisions that we've made in the past. We're even going to find out where wind and solar fit. Now, wind and solar are not going to solve our energy problems. We know that. But there are niche markets where they will. And we're going to match that all of the above energy vision with a regulatory process that says starting today, regulatory agencies are going to become once again partners with America's businesses and with America's industries. If you don't have a public health, public safety, or national security reason to say no, then let the process move forward. And if you say no, no should not be the final answer. Our regulatory agencies like the EPA and the Department of the Interior should be working with America's industries to find solutions to breaking down the barriers to America's progress forward. I believe if we had that kind of energy vision, we would see unleashed once again the amazing, innovative spirit of American exceptionalism. You see, our founding fathers learned something in the 1700s that many in Washington either don't remember or have simply chosen to forget. The heartbeat of America has a lot more to do with what happens around the dinner table than with what happens in the halls of Congress. And when you give the American people and industries like yours the freedom to innovate without an overreaching, over-controlling, over-regulating federal government breathing down their necks, America achieves the unbelievable. You look at our history. I don't have to tell you. Barely 230 years old, a baby in relation to many of the other great industrialized nations of the world, but you look at how many of the modern conveniences, most everything that America enjoys today, the world enjoys today, was birthed right here in America. From the discovery of electricity and light to the invention of the combustion engine and mass production of automobiles to air power and space travel and communicating technology, medical technology. Folks, we can do this. And we don't need a bunch of bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. telling us how to do it. That's what I'm trying to fight against. I'm very, very proud to represent the people of eastern and southeastern Ohio, to be their voice there, and I'm going to continue to wage that fight. With that,